Okay, we're holding Yore Deah of the Taaruvot and Kuf Beis in Dover Sheyesh Lo Matirin. We've already covered the Halachas, the Machaber, the Ramah, the various Noise Kelim. What we'll do tonight is a Chazorah of the main points which are important to remember. There are various shitas concerning almost any one of these halachas, but we don't need to go through all of them. It's important just to keep in mind the basics so as to be able to know who holds what. Lemaise. Davar sheyesh lo matirin in itself as a principle, the concept of davar sheyesh lo matirin has two explanations for the most part. I think there's some who offer a third idea perhaps. But we covered Rashi and the Ran. And that's what we should have in mind. Rashi gives a very simple approach to this whole idea. Chachamim gave us shi'urim when it comes to beat. All kinds of shi'urim. The shi'ur of Roiv, shi'ur of Shishim, there's even a shi'ur b'mashu. There's some shi'urim in between. Me'ah, Masayim, whatever. All kinds of shi'urim in order to accomplish bittul in a taruvos. When something will become anyway mutter on its own, there are no shi'urim. That's wrong. Right. There are no shi'urim d'Rabbanan. In other words, there's no bittul here that we have to give you a shi'ur for. It's going to be mutter by itself anyway. You might as well wait. That's more or less what Rashi is saying. If something is going to be mutter by itself, somehow it's going to be mutter. Rashi didn't say with time necessarily, because as we've explained in the very beginning, davar sheyesh lo matirin can be either through time or through a small maaseh, small action that may be required to fix it. So if something can be taken care of easily, I'm saying easily for a reason, right, then the rule of shi'urim for bittul does not apply. And that is why davar sheyesh lo matirin afilu be'elef lo botel, because there's no shi'urim. Okay? So that was Rashi's explanation. What does the Ran say? Ran says something very different, and sometimes when you have very different opinions, they can make a difference. Sometimes they don't make a difference. It's nice to hear a drasha like this and to hear a drasha like that, but sometimes there is a nafkamina. There can be an nafkamina, and perhaps even in davar sheyesh lo matirin there can be a nafkamina in some scenarios, depending if you learn like the Ran or if you learn like Rashi. So what does the Ran say? The famous Rabbi Yehuda, remember Rabbi Yehuda with dam, blood, dam aser, dam apor, min b'mino, min b'she'eno minoi. What's going on? We hold min b'mino is bottle. That's the halacha. That's the way we hold. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Rabbi Yehuda holds min b'minoi is not bottle. Never. Why? The idea behind min b'mino not being bottle is because the two minim, which are identical, by being placed together, one strengthens the other. So you have much more of the same kind of min. There's no real bittul then. Bittul means to cancel out. Cancel out is not just because there's a mixture and we cannot identify the issue. Canceling out means that one is actually annulling, canceling, diluting when it involves tam, and even if it involves yavesh, bittul means it takes over. And we learn it from Achlu Rav and the Hattas. It takes over completely, and it makes the issue as though disappear altogether. That's min be enomino. That's something that can be accomplished by min be'eno minoi. We hold that concept by min be'minoi too, by Yovesh, that one cancels out the other. But what about them being the same? What about that? Yes, they are the same, but they're also not the same. How is min be'minoi not the same? One is mutter and one is aser. When one is mutter and one is aser, the fact that they're very different, white and black, it's like a min be'eno mino. So when it comes to the concept of strengthening each other, right, or canceling each other, we do consider it. We consider that concept that if two would be identically the same, maybe they would not cancel each other. But what do we say? Why do they nevertheless not like Rabbi Yehuda? Because they're in essence they are different. One is mutter and one is aser, makes them a form of min be'eno mino. Okay, and therefore there's a koach there to push one aside, the majority. So the Ran says over here, not like Rashi, Ran says here, when you have something that's going to become mutter, it is like that which is already mutter. Same family, same category. And therefore they don't cancel each other out. Follow me? If something is going to be mutter, it is already like the heter.
In essence.
In essence.
It's only temporarily not mutter.
Only temporary.
It's something
Right.
that's fleeting. That's
Exactly.
something that's not essential.
Yes. But in essence, it will become and therefore be just like the heter. Which means what? You're going to strengthen each other, like that concept of min strengthening the other min. If that's the case, they're going to be really like a min b'minoi, using the concept of min b'minoi that they strengthen each other. They're not going to be batal. Interesting why he had to use that idea when Rashi is really a lot more logical, but it could be that this is true, and this is true, like the famous Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim. They're both true. However, what happens when we have a min b'she'enu minoi? Min b'she'enu minoi, according to the Ran, is very easy to understand. Right? According to the Ran, the Mechaber says the halacha is that davar sheyesh lo matirin does not apply by min b'she'enu minoi, right? So according to the Ran, it is easier to understand than according to Rashi.
It's very nice to understand.
According to the Ran, you basically say, well, this is a real min b'she'enu minoi to begin with, and they will always be so. Well, b'she'enu minoi, they cancel each other out, like any other taruvas. According to Rashi, however, why should min b'eino minoi be batal? It's a davar sheyesh lo matirin. Just wait. If the whole idea is to wait, why is min be'eino minoi any different than min ben minoi? Okay, so did you have a little bit of a time to review that?
No, actually.
No. Yeah. The Shach, I think, gets into explaining this. There's a Torah Chatos, which is the Ramah 2, that says, when you have a taruvos of min b'she'eno minoi, what you're going to really have here, the one that got mixed in, it's going to be nikra al shema heter. It loses its status, it loses its name. It is bottle as it is. It is bottle in the majority of the other min. It takes on another identity. In other words, and therefore it's not shayach to say, this right now, this isser will become mutter. This isser that we ordinarily say is becoming mutter, this is not here anymore. By virtue of the fact that it's mixed with another min, it takes on the name of that other min. It becomes that. That little bit of sugar is lost in the coffee. It becomes coffee. Just threw in a little quick example. Sweet coffee. Understand? You follow me? The Taz, I think, doesn't like that explanation. He says that's not enough. I can't still figure it out. So I'm not saying here this is maybe the best explanation, but that's how the Torah Chatas brings down. That according to Rashi, this is the way to understand it. That once you have min b'she'eno minoi, you can't say this thing here is going to become heter. This is going to become heter at this time. This thing here that is being mixed be'eno mino has lost its identity completely and has taken over the identity of the other min in which it is mixed. So we can't say this iser is called heter or this iser will be heter because it's not there. It has been taken over by another min altogether, which it is now comprised as part of. That's the explanation given by the Torah Chatas. Okay, now, we spoke about a situation where if you have a suffix, afilu suffix im noldu b'yontov, nevertheless, we apply the davar sheyesh lo matirin. What's the chidush? The chidush is this whole thing is a derabanan. So the Mechaber says afilu, nevertheless, even if you have a true suffix, and suffix derabanan lekula, davar sheyesh lo matirin is no suffix derabanan. The whole idea is wait. Learn to be patient. Wait till Sunday. Wait till after Shabbat. Wait till after Yom Tov. So suffix here does not help. Right?
Is mutter, or is that assume that it will become mutter?
Right now we're assuming it for sure become mutter. By the virtue of waiting to the following day after Yom Tov. However, we did learn that in a situation where it's not guaranteed that it will become mutter, it's not so sure that something will become mutter, or it can be, but it requires some action, then we don't apply the rule of davar sheyesh lo matir. So let's first talk about something that does not require action, something that just we're not sure if it will become mutter. And what's the example of that? The example of that is beitza shel sofek treifa. Beitza of a treifa is not kosher. There's a cloud, there's a rule. That which comes out from the tameh is tameh. Right? That which comes out from treifa is treif. So beitza shel treifa, here Mechaber says sofek treifa, so by beitza of a real treifa, what would be the din? Just like any other issue being mixed up. If it got mixed up, unless you hold the beitza is a davar shebeminyan, then you're getting into trouble. But let's assume that we're not concerned about davar shebeminyan, right? Which is another category of things that, according to some, is not botol, afilu be'elef, depending on what we're talking about. But if we don't have that to worry about, the beitza of a real treifa, an ostrich egg. I like that one. Huh? But you know what? With an ostrich egg, it's so big. See, unless it's a beitza trufa, somebody made an omelet of all the eggs. So anyway, beitza of a treifa wouldn't be an issue. So that's what the Mechaber says. Beitza shel sofek treifa. That God makes him be'acheres eino bedin davar sheyesh lo matirim. Lefi she'ein amati bevadai ve'eino beyodoi. It's not within his ability to get any change. It's not a vadai that it will become mutter. It's a sofek. By the way, what can happen after a while with this beitza shel sofek treifa? It will be determined if, in fact, this from where this beitza came, or it will be determined if the chicken was treifa or not. One of the two. Right now, it's a sofek. So there's always the possibility that it may turn out to be a treif. So it's not a vadai that it will become mutter. If that's the case, that it's not a vadai that it will have a heter at some point, I don't apply the rule of davar sheyesh lo matirim to. And therefore, at the time that it's being mixed into other foods or eggs or whatever, it's bottle. Bottle in the shishim ve'echod or whatever, bottle in whatever shir it needs to be bottled in. So what's the question here? What's the problem with this sofek treifa? Beitza shel sofek treifa is always going to be memonef shach mutter. It doesn't really belong in this halacha of davar sheyesh lo matir. Why does the Mechaber even bring it? It's always going to be mutter regardless. Why? What does memonef shach here mean? Memonef shach tells us, regardless of how you look at it, it's going to be mutter. If it ends up being treif, then it's not a davar sheyesh lo matir to begin with.
This bottle.
If it ends up being kosher,
So it's kosher.
so it's kosher. I mean, why do you have to say here that this davar sheyesh lo matir, davar sheyesh lo matir doesn't apply if it's a suffix? Good question. Some raise this question, and because it bothers some of the poskim, they say it must be talking about a space of sofek treifa that was known to be yontiv.
So if it's a suffix, so if it's a treifa, then there was no yontif. It's not going to answer the other beitzim.
No, in other words, that we're not really concerned. In other words, we don't really consider anymore the memonef shach. Right at this moment, we don't consider memonef shach
Because if it's not treifa, then it would be a nolda b'yontif.
Right. So because it's a nolda b'yontav, then you still have the possibility of saying there should be a davar sheyesh lo matir in here. But however, since it's a sofek in the tarfos itself,
and it could turn out that it's.
It could turn out to be that it's a treifa, so we don't say davar sheyesh lo matir. But stam, not nolda b'yontav. I mean, what's the question?
In other words, legabe nolda b'yontif, it'll become mutter, but since it could be a treifa, so even then it still didn't become.
Right. So you understand why beitza shel sofek treifa on its own halacha beitza shel sofek treifa. What does that have to do with the davar sheyesh lo matir?
Right.
Either way, it's mutter. But if you say, that this beitza of sofek was laid also on yontev, then it makes a little sense that it could still be an issue. After all, after yontev, it will be mutter. No, comes along the chidush and says because it's a sofek and it's not a vadai, then we don't apply davar sheyesh lo matir to it.
At least theoretically, don't we have a certain amount that they become whether they're walking around a tree?
We go by the roy for that. You have a sfekas in animals. You're right. There is a minority. There is a percentage
So we're only doing
of cows that are treif.
So then when would we from a treifa?
It came about as some sort of something, we don't know. We know that there's a treif chicken there. One of them, we're not sure from which one the egg came from. That would be one example until we figure it out.
Was attacked by a fox. He clawed it. It's still alive. One of the chickens was attacked by a fox.
Okay, that could be one form of treif.
We don't know which one.
Yeah. And we don't know if the egg came before the chicken or the chicken came before the egg.
The egg came before the fox. New variation.
Anyway, yeah.
Now, really, with respect to the double
Yeah.
treifa and nolda, that we, if it would be a vadai treifa, have the same din as a suffix treifa, with respect to davar shesh lo material.
Very good. If a beitza of a real treifa was laid on Yontav, it would also be a davar shesh lo material.
No.
I'm sorry. In that case, a beitza of a real treifa, it's for sure a real treifa, so you would not have a davar shesh lo material.
Exactly, you don't have a problem with nolda.
Exactly.
And therefore it wouldn't answer the other eggs.
Right.
So
in Taaruvot, it would be bottle like anything else,
so
because it's not
treifa
shayach.
Exactly.
Right.
So suffix treifa and a vadai treifa have the same din.
On a Yontav.
On a Yontav.
I would.
There's a suffix treifa because it's
Yes,
not vadai.
but for a different reason.
Yeah, one because it's not vadai.
It's not vadai, right?
Because it's not vadai.
You understood? Everybody got that?
Because it's not vadai kosher.
A beitza of a real treifa is treif, right? Got mixed, is bottle. But if it happened on Yontav, it would also be bottle, because it's the whole halacha of davar shesh lo material doesn't apply here if it's a vadai treifa. So even if it's on Yontav, it would be bottle. The whole chiddush here is by a suffix. It's a suffix treifa. Okay? It's a suffix treifa shenisarva b'acheres that got mixed in, and we don't know. And therefore we're saying possibly since it's only a suffix, well, maybe it's going to be mutter. Now, maybe we should apply the halacha davar shesh lo material. So Allah Mechaber says no. Since it's a suffix and therefore there won't be a vadai heter, we don't apply the rule of davar shesh lo material. But the question is, why does the Mechaber stick this in here for suffix treifa? Either way, it's mutter. If it's treif, it's mutter. No, if it's bottle. If it's not treif, it's kosher, then what's the question? Unless you say this suffix treifa was also nolda b'yontav. And then you need the chiddush, that even though it was nolda b'yontav, it's not going to be vadai mutter, so we don't apply davar shesh lo material to it. All right. Now, one question that's raised that we may or may not have covered is, why don't we say sfek sfeika here? Now, sfek sfeika is a big sugya, which we eventually will spend a lot of time on, towards the end of Hilchos Taaruvot. What's the sfek sfeika? What possible sfek sfeika can you have on Yontav? What's the question? The question is not if he was born on Yontav. There's a suffix legabe being born on Yontav too, in the first Mechaber. Tafilu suffix im nolda b'yontav. It's not for sure. If it's for sure nolda b'yontav, it's aser, right? So the first seif we have a suffix nolda b'yontav. So in the case of suffix nolda b'yontav, forget about treifa for now. Why don't?
But to Rabbanans, you have nolda as in the Rabbanan, if I'm kidding.
No, forget about the Rabbanas. Right now we have a sfek sfeika possibly. What is a sfek sfeika?
Applies for the Doraisa also.
Sure, you can. In other words, you can have such a situation.
But is it reserved?
We'll eventually learn it. It's a big sugya, sure. It's a big sugya. When do you apply it and when not? So Safek, born on Yontev, Safek not. And even if you say it was, who says this is the egg that I'm eating now to eat the egg? Follow? Sfek, Sfeka. But this is not a real strong Sfek, Sfeka. Why is this not a real strong Sfek, Sfeka? Because one suffix is in the status of the egg, whether it was born on Yontev or not. And the second suffix is whether this is the egg or not. It's not a Sfek, Sfeka in the same question. Eventually we'll learn about it. So anyway, so that's one explanation as to why we can't have a Sfek, Sfeka, at least in our example. Another explanation, which is much easier to handle, is, guess what? There's no Sfek, Sfeka allowed in Dover Sheish Matir. That is why there's an interesting Taz here, in the Geshachtu. It's actually Machloek Geshach and Taz, possibly. What happens if you have an egg getting mixed in a Taaruvos? Not just an egg, actually, Dover Sheish Matir, whatever, anything, got mixed into a Taaruvos. It's not bottle. It's a Dover Sheish Matir. Then you have, however, this Taaruvos got mixed into another Taaruvos of Roiv. Do we say, okay, the first one, it's a Savid Rabbana Bauer Machmir, it's a Dover Sheish Matir. So it's not bottle. But what about this taruvas becoming mixed into another taruvas? Do we then say that it's bottle? Taaruvot King says it's mutter, and the Shach says no, it's asur. Even if you have many taruvas, the fact that something is a davar sheish lo matirin does not allow us to be more lenient just because there are more sveikas, just because there's more
taruvas. I understand
taruvas.
why it would be plausible that you understand why it would be plausible to get, because what got mixed in heter taruvas is something that in itself, namely a taruvas contains an isur.
Right.
So the taruvas itself right now is an isur because of davar sheish lo matirin.
Yes.
So this taruvas is because of davar sheish lo matirin will eventually become permitted because it's davar sheish lo
Right.
matirin. So why would we now all of a sudden become lenient back to a davar sheish lo matirin?
Yeah, it all depends how you look at it.
Yeah,
That's what the all the Taz says. Look at it. Look at the Siman Kufyu to understand this concept a little bit better. So he doesn't really explain it over here, but there is such a situation where getting mixed into more does make it a little bit, as we say in Yiddish, schwacher. Anyway. All right, the next dinner we spoke about is chazusa. Okay, what's chazusa? Chazusa is a concept that is found a little bit. There's a little discussion of it in Gemara, Shas. In Yore Deah, kimat you won't see it. Why don't you see chazusa in Yore Deah? Well, what is chazusa? Chazusa is really appearance. That's what the word means. Appearance is even b'mashahu. The whole concept of chazusa means I don't care how much I have even a little bit, but I have a chazusa. Food coloring. There's no tam, there's nothing else, there's no be'ein, ve'isu, but there's the color. And color, as the Gro explains, when it comes to hilchas, taruvos, isurim, Yore Deah, is usually not a problem. It's not. It's not the real thing. It's not the isur. There's no tam keika, there's nothing. So when is chazusa a problem? Chazusa is only a problem because of its role. Just like davar amaymed plays an important role in forming the cheese, if something that is put into the food is such an important ingredient that it lends appearance to it, then in davar sheyesh lo matirin it could pose a problem.
Did I understand you right now from between? It's really putting in for some other purpose, taste or whatever, and it also affects the appearance versus specifically to have that appearance effect on the appearance. That in that later case, in the latter case, that's when it becomes a problem.
I think there's a places that explains this a little bit more detail. That when it comes to certain ingredients that are mixed into a food item, and they consist of ingredients that are important for the ma'achol, for the tafshil, for the food, it creates a situation of min b'minoi. That's what he said. It creates a situation of min b'minoi, and therefore, it's davar sheish lo matirin would apply to it in this case. In other words, it's not something that is just gone. It's not something that is secondary. Something that is ignored. And the Tosfos brings example of salt and other things that are used with certain macholim that are important for the food. So here, what we have in the Ramah are two examples of eggs being used, either libno b'machol, to whiten, somehow to give it a certain color, or nosu begdera letakin agdera, or to fix it, in other words, to give it a consistency. It is a very important ingredient of this machol, even though what we have here is a min be'eino minoi situation, because the egg is not the same min as the rest of the food. In these two examples that the Ramah brings down, it would continue to be a davar sheish lo matirin, even though it's min be'eino minoi. So what we just said, min be'eino minoi doesn't apply. This would be one exception, because it converts or transforms the egg into, like Tosfos explains, into a form of minoi. It's essentially part of the same thing. It's necessary there. It becomes one with the rest of the tafshil. And that's why chazusa is an issue here in davar sheish lo matirin. What are the machloikes even by chazusa? The machloikes has to do whether we need chazusa and tam, or is chazusa by itself sufficient? In other words, is the coloring enough, or does it actually have to give flavor? Does it actually have to do more than just an appearance? That's the only chilukim that you may find in the poskim about the significance of chazusa. Because chazusa we paskin lav milsahi. It is not something that we reckon with. It does not make anything asur. In shari surim. But by davar sheish lo matirin, since it becomes a form of min b'minoi, then it's no longer a min b'sheino minoi. In other words, it therefore davar sheyesh lo matirim applies to it. That's pretty much all about chazuzah. The real halacha is brought down in Orach Chaim, in the Hilchos Yontiv. If anybody wants to look it up there, the Mishnah Berurah speaks about it in Mechaber, as to an egg being used by mistake, of course, Shinol B'Yontiv in the tafshil. But how was it used? What did it? It was just an egg that fell in. I mean, it was somebody added an egg, or did it have? Actually, it was an active ingredient in what was being made. All right, let's go on to the next din. The next din has to do with kli shenesa b'blias iser. You have kelim that absorb an iser, nevela, and of course, before you use them, they require hagola or libun, depending on what the keli is. But in the meantime, this keli got mixed up with other kelim, and you don't know which keli it is. And the Mechaber just told us a halacha that one of the exceptions of davar sheyesh lo matirim is what? If something is not going to be vaday muter, then we don't apply it. And the second exception was if it requires some effort on my part to bring it about, and that effort is maybe there's too much of an effort or expense, then that also does not apply. So this is an example, apparently, of the Mechaber's exception, that if it's various kelim, and he doesn't tell us an amount, where there's effort involved, expense, and or expense involved in bringing about the kashering of the kelim, we don't apply the davar sheyesh lo matirim. So the kelim being mixed with each other would be very similar to min b'mino yavish b'yavish, that they would be batal. Okay, so far so good. And what's the explanation given, Ramon? It's too much effort involved. So that's one of our exceptions of davar sheyesh lo matirim. So on this we have quite a few poskim that disagree. First of all, we have the Ra'ah. What does the Ra'ah say? The Ra'ah says, wait a minute, since you can easily extract the Isser, you can be poilet the Isser through Hagala, if you can be maflit the Isser through Hagala, then the Isser is really Be'ein. It's not, so you can't say bottle here. You can't say that the halachas of bittul apply here. Because once you do Hagala, the Isser will be there. The Isser will come out. The Isser, therefore, is an Isser Nikar. It's like the Isser would be Nikar. Bittul, he says, is only Shayak when the Isser is not Nikar. So it's not so much of a davar sheyesh lo matirim or not, it's from a different angle. I believe that's what he's explaining. He's introducing here the idea that Bittul applies when an Isser is not Nikar. But if you can bring about something to make the Isser Nikar, you can't eat it. So therefore, through Hagala, you're going to be poilet the Isser. You're going to be poilet the Isser is Nikar. The Isser is Nikar. You don't have to do Bittul. But I think the Aruch HaShulchan explains that the Shach doesn't really get into it. The Shach is not concerned about it. He just mentions it, brings it down. But apparently he's not saying, oh, no, we're going to have to go with this Ra'ah. Apparently he's not concerned with it. But the Aruch HaShulchan says something very nice. He says, wait a minute, the Isser is Nikar? No, it's not. When you make Hagala, where's the Isser? It's gone. You don't see it. So that's not really an example of an Isser Nikar. That's also very nice. He explains that when you will make the eventual Hagala and bring out, of course you will accomplish taking it out, but don't tell me that you can actually see the Isser. And he brings this as an example with remember the example of Eitzim Shenoshu Me'adekel on Shabbos? Mm-hmm. You know, that eventually everything is gone and consummated by the fire.
Because it gives you the benefit. Right.
So it's being destroyed. In other words, you don't see it. You don't have it. So here he says, no, this is not a real Isser that it's there. It's gone.
While it's visible, the wood, you're not having a bit.
Right. While it's visible, yeah. So he therefore wants to say that not the Aruch HaShulchan, but they all want to say that because it's a form of Isser Nikar, you would apply davar sheyesh lo matirim. In other words, you would need to do something to get it out.
I think that maybe the Ra'ah means Nikar Shulchan.
Could be, yeah.
The Ra'ah, when he says Nikar, it's something that's a separate entity because I will be iterated.
Could be, yeah. Well, that's what he's trying to say in the end.
Shulchan says it's not something that I see with my eyes.
Yeah. So. Well, obviously he's trying to say because and therefore, because it's a separate thing, I can apply davar sheyesh lo matirim to it. Right. In other words, go ahead and do whatever it takes to get it out, yeah.
And therefore it is a davar sheyesh lo matirim, therefore it ushers.
Right. But the second explanation that he brings, the raw, which is also very important, is, but wait a minute, you have by chad betray bottle. In the case of when something is bottle, that's only by yovesh because there's no tam. Wherever you have tam, it would be aser. You need shishin, right? Here he says, if you eventually cook in these pots, you're going to have the tam. You're going to have tam in the foods that you're going to be cooking in the pots. So therefore, you can't say that it would just be bottle just like that. Because when do we say bottle? By yovesh, because there's no tam. But if there is tam, you don't just say bottle. And here there will be tam if you cook it.
But tam would only go.
Right. But he's trying to say that there's going to be tam here.
Okay.
So the Aruch HaShulchan also on this he explains. But wait a minute, how could you say that the blias isur should be better than the isur be'ein? More chamer. The blias isur you're trying to say should be more chamer than isur be'ein.
And with respect to what, it would be more chamer.
Because the isur be'ein we do say is batal.
And sick.
Whatever.
Yeah.
If you have yavesh b'yavesh, it's batal b'roiv. So you're trying to say, if you, was in theory, the real isur is batal. You're saying
that compares. That's what it's saying. We're talking about the davar yavesh,
Yeah.
and the taste of the davar yavesh went into the pot.
Yeah.
And as a davar yavesh, if it's physically present, it would be batal beroy.
Right.
So why should the blia in the pot require 60?
Yeah, in this situation, it is a form of yavesh, right? We don't have the tam yet, so that's what the Aruch HaShulchan says. Why would the blia be more chomer than the real thing? If it would, the real isur would be there, it would be batal. So very nice.
And the real isur, I understand correctly, was it a davar yavesh?
Would be a davar yavesh, yes, in that situation, right? So why would you make the blia more chomer than the real isur bein? So therefore, the Aruch HaShulchan doesn't buy what the Ra'ah is saying. However, the Mari ben Lev mentioned what your scenario was. What if it's basar b'chalav? With the basar b'chalav, it's already min b'shein u'minoi. Forget about the isur of being mevashal. That's not really the issue. I think the Mari ben Lev is talking about is more. You have two separate kinds of things. You're getting the two together. I mean, you have both issues. The basar b'chalav is a min be'ein u'minoi. It's not min b'minoi. Okay, it's a real min be'ein u'minoi. So I believe the shach, maybe other poskim say, no problem. Anytime you have a situation like that, just leave it me'es la'es. Leave it for the next day. Once you have something which is 24 hours have gone by, as we will learn, it's pogum. Then you don't have that problem, at all.
So then you don't have the problem of
min be'ein
material?
u'minoi. Of course. In other words, here we're talking about the mechaber is saying that if it has a blia, it's too difficult, the effort involved to get it out. You have a question about, you may end up cooking it. Just leave it me'es la'es, and you got rid of this problem. You got rid of this possibility.
Just leave it for
Just
24 hours.
yes, and then you don't have the possibility or the problem that you may end up cooking it and tam and whatever. All right. So I think almost everybody actually says that should be done regardless of how you hold. It's not a bad idea.
We always say we do Haggadah.
That's correct. That's very true. That's also a good point. We anyway say leave it to him, but here you don't have to make a gola. That's the point. Why? Because it's too much effort involved. It's bottle. But why not just leave it till tomorrow and be yoitze, like we say, everybody. Make everybody happy. And this brings up another machloikes, the machloikes Taz and Shach, about the fact that you have all these קיהן. Should we make a gola anyway? Because you may end up cooking and mixing all the foods together. And that's what the Shach, the Taz actually is machmer on that. So just because of the suffix that this may happen. And the Shach says just leave it for tomorrow. In other words, you don't have to be makpid to make everything, just because you eventually may come to cook them all together and mix them all together. In other words, and then you'll have the real isser. Similar to the halacha that eventually we'll learn, that even if you have bitu, you can't eat all of it together, right? Remember that? Even something is batal, according to some, at least, you can't eat the whole thing. If that's the case, if you can ever cook in all the pots at the same time, you have a major affair, you're going to mix the foods, you're going to eat them all together, it's going to be a problem. Taz says, you know what, just make a gullah to everything. The Shach says, no. They're bottle, but just leave it till tomorrow. And once it's pogum, you don't have that requirement, or you don't have that chashashi. Even if it were to happen, it would be okay. So that's what we do, I think. Just leave it for the next day. Okay, just a couple more details. Isur machmas atzmoy, remember that? When we spoke about roilis kabed, we made a chiluk about if something is asur machmas asmoy, or if it's because of the belia. It's an isur balua. Is this the real isur? Or it's a regular piece of meat or food that has an isur balua in it. We don't say royal iskabed on the balua. We would say royal iskabed on the whole piece of meat. But if the piece of meat is okay, it just it happens to be also because of the isur balua, we don't say royal iskabed on that. Okay? So Mechaber, or the Ramah says, we don't say davar sheyesh lo matirin on a isur balua. Okay? Davka me isur be'in. Aval taimo bottle. That's another one. That's another Ramah. That not only does it have to be isur be'in, and not the time itself, it cannot be an isur balua. If the isur is not machmas atzmo, is bottle. What's his example of an isur machmas atzmo? A piece of meat that was not salted for 3 days. Not salted for 3 days. The isur balua is the dam. In the same way that we don't say royal iskabed on that for reasons that it's not the meat, it's the blood that's making it asur. Same thing over here.
What has its own blood?
Because you can make it sli.
It's Lee.
What would be how do you deal with a piece of meat that was not salted for 3 days? You only have one choice. You roast it on an open pit of fire. That's the only way you're going to bring out the blood. So, but some say there's a lot of places here. It was very interesting, fascinating to see how many criticize and have a problem with this Ramah. No, that's not right. Whoever told you that davar sheyesh lo matirim does not apply to isur balua? We learned that only by royal iskabed. The whole idea of davar sheyesh lo matirim is much more simple. I think that's not correct English. Much simpler, not much more simple. Simpler. Just wait till tomorrow. Why should you make a distinction between if it has an isur balua or not? It has an isur. Just wait till tomorrow, or wait till to do whatever is necessary to do to get the blood out. Roast it, whatever it is. Why should you make such a chiluk? What does the Ramah think? Pretty good question. Why would you say that this is not a davar sheyesh lo matirim? This is an Aruch HaShulchan too. I remember for sure. But he says, wait a minute. This in order for something to be a davar sheyesh lo matirim, it has to have been asur for something that it will be mutar, right? It has to have been asur for the same thing that it's going to be mutar. In other words, whatever it was asur for,
the heter has to apply to what is asur.
Asur. Is it asur to roast it now? This is not an example of davar sheyesh. What you're telling me, you have a problem with with this davar sheyesh lo matirim, and it doesn't apply here altogether. It's not asur for me to roast it now. That I should say, you know what? Wait until you do something. I can roast it now too.
No, you have to roast it.
Sure.
We're talking about something that is.
But it never became asur to roast for me to apply the general rule of davar sheyesh lo matirim for something that is asur for me to do now in the way it is. It had to have become asur to roast.
But it takes that effort. You have to roast it.
Yeah, but
there's
no isur on it if I roast it.
If you roast it,
there's no isur. So therefore, to apply davar sheyesh lo matirim, it has to have been to something that is asur for me now for some reason. And that's an explanation given that
right now the meat has the blood. Right now the meat has the blood absorbed. The meat with the blood absorbed is now in a taaruvot with other meat that has no blood, and there is 60 of that other meat that has no blood against the meat that has blood.
Okay. Yeah.
So, you're telling me I can't say that this meat that has the blood in it is misbuttled in the 60 times meat, or we're talking about meat. Yavesh. Two pieces of meat that don't have blood, one piece of meat that has blood.
All right, fine.
So you're telling me the one piece of meat that has blood is not misbuttled against the meat that don't have blood because yesh lo matirim.
Right.
What is the matirim? Take the piece of meat that has the blood and roast it.
Right.
So you're telling me, no, it's not a davar sheyesh lo matirim because I can take the piece of meat and roast it.
Right.
So whether you're saying the same thing.
Yeah, no. So again, the poskim who don't like what the Ramah said, this is only the poskim that didn't agree with the Ramah, that you make such a chiluk between isur balua or not. They agree with this, that this is not a davar sheyesh lo matirim, but for a different reason. Okay, this is not a real davar sheyesh lo matirim because it's not becoming mutter that which was usher.
In other words, the blood is the isser here, not the meat.
That's a separate thing. I'm going to talk about that. That's a different idea of what's the isser here. Now you're touching on another explanation. But their basic explanation is, it would have had to be usher for me to roast, and then now I can roast. I can always roast. In other words, the roasting solution has nothing to do with the davar sheish lo matirin.
So I'll tell you why I'm confused with respect to that opinion.
Right.
Because the Mechaber was telling us, doesn't have to be that you have to wait a certain time. It can either be you have to wait, or you have to make some extra effort.
Right.
And if that extra effort is large, too big, too effortful,
Right.
then you don't have to make
Right.
that effort. But so you see, it's not necessarily a question of waiting for a period of time. Could be the extra effort. Here, the extra effort is roasting.
Yeah, but you're right.
So
That's
they
a good
seem
point.
to not agree with that.
Not agree with that. No. Because that mechaber is some might say that this would also be a big thing to do. Maybe I want to cook it. Yeah. So that's
not their argument.
That's not their argument.
Their argument is you don't have to wait. So in
Yeah.
other words, they don't follow the mechaber in saying that waiting and doing an effort are two.
No, I didn't say that. No, it could be they agree with the mechaber in general about depending what's required. What is required to do? Like with Tevel and with Ma'aser Sheni, there are other things that are davar sheish lo matirim by making a pidyon, by bringing it to Yerushalayim. It all depends what's involved, how much tircha is involved. It could be that they didn't suggest that, this being that, because of the tircha you have to do, and that wouldn't be the explanation here. They're just saying that this is not a davar sheish lo matirim because it's if you're saying that the solution is to roast it, right?
I can roast it now.
As he says, let me read it to you inside from the Ramah. A Now he says it for a different reason, and I'm going to get to that. So, but I'm using the afal pi, even though some say it's davar sheish lo because it's muteres letzli. They say that's not the you don't have to have that thing. The reasoning is simply that davar sheish lo matirim has to have been mutter for something that was always usher for me. Tzli was not always usher to me.
It was never us.
Right, it was never usher. So it's not your typical davar sheish lo matirim. But you can argue what you're saying. What you're saying is not completely wrong. Let's look at the next Ramah. The Ramah says, in using that excuse, why not call it the davar sheish lo matirim just because I can make tzli? So he says like this. Now remember, he started off saying that this piece of meat is not a davar sheish lo matirim because it's an isa balua. Okay? And now he's going in, and by the way, what about those who say that it's a davar sheish lo matirim because it's muteres letzli? So now he says, but wait a minute, there's something else here. Okay? The whole issue is because of the dam abalua ba. Now, what is he trying to tell us with kol is the dam abalua ba? What does that tell you? He doesn't explain, but what is he saying? But the issue is just on the dam abalua ba. What's the isser? The blood.
The blood will always remain.
What is this called? What you have in your hand right now? 1 second. What's this piece of meat that's in your hand? It's called meat. It's not called blood.
Right. So that was the original. I mean, the isser is balua. It's the same argument.
Right. But that now he's clarifying.
But the blood never becomes heter. Through tzli, the blood never becomes heter. The meat becomes heter, but not the blood. And the blood is the isser. So it's not a davar sheish lo matirim because the blood never becomes heter.
Yeah, but when you say something will become mutter, are you saying the blood will be mutter?
No, the meat is not the one that's forbidden. It's the blood that's the isser.
Yeah, but the meat is forbidden now.
Because of the blood.
Right.
But the meat in and of itself, intrinsically, is not an
You're
isser.
right.
So what will become mutter, I'm just going to be separating the isser from the heter.
Right.
But what is isser right now will remain a separated isser. And what is heter right now will become consumable because it was separated from the isser that's ussering in the right now.
Nonetheless,
but I'm not changing either one of the two from a heter to an isser.
But nonetheless, because the isser is on the, in other words, what's becoming mutter is the meat. So what comes out is that this is more of a sort of min be'enu minoi. In a sense, if you look at it right, it's not a min be'mino situation. It's more like a min be'enu minoi. You have two separate things. You have the blood and you have the meat. And then you also, on top of that, we also discussed that you cannot have a situation where the nesar should be more chomer than the isur. Than the oser. We also have that. Right. So that's what, because of that, the various
And the
explanations
Nesar here is the meat.
is the meat.
The Oser is the blood.
Is the blood,
And
right.
the blood has no material.
No. The thing
The
is
blood
like
will never become
this. This no. So
You want to say that the
the
meat
blood. No. Listen to this. Had this blood, which is asur, been mixed in a taruvos, it would be bottle.
because it's not a Davar Sheshlo material.
Exactly.
That was my argument.
Right. Exactly. So now, what are we doing? We're taking the nesar and saying it's more chomer
Right.
than the isur.
Exactly. That
Yeah.
was my argument.
Right.
That was my argument.
Exactly. And that we don't do. And that's an additional explanation of why we don't say that. Yeah, like, it doesn't make sense that we should say it. So all of that has to do with the Isur Balua, even though he just says that it's an Isur Balua, but you're right. The explanation is either that or that. Did I lose you? I mean,
Well, the bottom line is the blood never becomes permitted, and therefore it's not something that's Yeshlo Marim.
right.
And the meat forbidden by the blood itself, intrinsically, is not a prohibition. And therefore the fact that it will become mutter doesn't really change this. It only becomes separated.
It
from
only
the
becomes
Isser.
separated,
That
exactly.
assumes that all meat is in the kashering process. Now you're using out the blood, as opposed to saying no, the meat is usher, and all meat is usher. So you shafted until.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, you're right. But the Ramah's main point, what we need to remember for the halacha, it's important not to get lost too much in the deep. The important thing is we have some exceptions to Dover Sheish Lo Matir. Too much effort involved, right? It's a suffix. It's an Isur Balua. It's not the real Isur that we're talking about. Now, it's not an Isur Machmas Atzmoi. It has to be Be'ain, not the Tam. That's what's important to remember. So there, in this Ramah, in this long Ramah, there's a whole list of various exceptions to what is not a Dover Sheish Lo Matir for a variety of reasons. But the reasons are not that important right now. Just to keep in mind that even though Dover Sheish Lo Matir is quite serious, remember, it's quite serious. There was some leniencies. One of them was that Be'shein Nomino doesn't apply. Wow. On the other hand, by a suffix, the Rabbanan, it does apply. Even by Sfeikor, according to some. Right? It's not Batul Beroiv. I mean, there's a lot of things going on. But here, nevertheless, there are a few exceptions where Dover Sheyesh Lo Matirim will not apply. So we need to know what those exceptions are. Whether it's for a quiz or whether it's for B'chlal Chazorah. And that's what's important here. Okay, and here comes one or two more that are very interesting. We didn't really get into Nedorim. Nedorim, somebody made a neder, something got mixed in. Well, just go be matu your neder. And matu your neder, even though it requires an effort, it's actually a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to be matu your neder, like you're stuck with a neder. And sometimes even with a shavua, even though we don't do a Torah shavuos usually, but sometimes even with a shavua. So with since you can do it, you need to do it. So So Mishenoda Medover Echo Benisar Vachakach Ledidei Mikvaot Sheish Lo Matirin. So if something got mixed in and you said, I'm not going to eat ever this food, chicken, meat, vegetarian for the rest of it, whatever, it got mixed in. Can you eat it? You made a nether. Just go be matter your nether. It's a Dover Sheish Lo Matirin.
Interesting.
Yeah. But what we did discuss real quickly was called Isser Shelo Hoyo Nikar Mikoidem Shenis Arev Have a bottle. Yeah, you have some. Remember on Shabbos, any juice of grapes that oozed out. Oozed is the word. Yeah, came out. Even though it happened by itself, it's a D'Rabbanan. You should not come to squeeze on Shabbos. But you already had grape juice sitting there in the vat before Shabbos. So this was not us. The Isser was not Nikar in the beginning. It was grapes. And so the halacha is called Isser Shelo Hoyo Nikar. It was not identified but recognized. Called Shenisa before it got mixed in with the rest. Have a bottle. You could wait till after Shabbos, of course. Nonetheless, it's still bottle because I did not see that coming out.
It never had an independent
Representation of being also. It was grapes. The grapes were not also. So that was another exception. Then we have Dover Sheyesh Lo Heter V'Choyze V'Nesak K'Go Chometz B'Pesach. Yeah, it's going to be mutter after Pesach, but it's going to be also again next Pesach. So the Rambam says it's a Dover Sheyesh Lo Matirin. The Ramah says Lo Mikvaot Dover Sheyesh Lo Matirin. The Mechaber says Chometz is not called Dover Sheyesh Lo Matirin. When is this Shayach? Before Pesach for the most part. After Chatzos. So on Pesach it's also B'Mashu, we're not going to have any mixture. Any Chometz got mixed in. After Pesach it's not a problem. It's mutter. Unless it's also because of a knas. So the question is really before Pesach, after Chatzos. So Rambam is the one that holds that it's a Dover Sheyesh Lo Matirin. The Mordechai, I think, holds that it's not because it becomes usher again the next year. The Ramban says it is a davar sheish lo matirim, even though it's asur after Pesach at times. That's only because of a knas. It doesn't mean that it's really asur. It's mutter. And the Ran says also, I think, that it's a davar sheish lo matirim. We pass like the mechaber. Chometz is a davar chometz. He says here chometz bepesach, but talking about chometz that time of the year is not called a davar sheish lo matirim. So it would be batel. Okay, and the last example, which I think is a fascinating example, and I'm not sure about the details, so maybe you want to help me with this one. We talked about an interesting example. Somebody cooked on Shabbos and bebezit. What's the halacha in Hilchos Shabbos? For him, it's asur le'olam. That's the way we pass it. It's a machloikis, the whole sugya. We pass it that for him, it's always asur. He can never eat from that dish. For everybody else, it's mutar, but after Shabbos. You cannot benefit for something that was done on Shabbos. You have to wait till after Shabbos. When this halacha is only by a Jew. By a goy, it's different. You know what the halacha is by goy. You have to wait after Shabbos, the time it took for him to cook it on Shabbos. Otherwise, we're afraid one day you may take advantage of, try to save time and have him cook something before Shabbos is over. Well, you're not going to benefit from it. You're going to have to wait the entire time.
And it gets cold by that.
So anyways, we're talking about a Jew. A Jew cooked something on Shabbos. It's also for him forever. For others, after Shabbos, it's mutar to eat. What happens if it got mixed up? It got mixed up.
On Shabbos itself.
Oh, that's a question. It doesn't say. Lo mikra davar sheish lo matir elo kin huto lemi shenesar. The real davar sheish lo matir, Ramah says it only applies if it will be mutar for the guy it was asur for. But if it for somebody, it will always remain asur, like the example of Shabbos, it will always remain asur for him. Is that a real davar sheish lo matir? It will always be asur. So Ramah says no, it's not. Afagav shemutar lacher. So what's the din? The din is, if it got mixed up, the halacha is, it's not a davar sheish lo matir. For him, it will always be asur. So it's batel.
For him.
Oh.
But for the people, it is davar sheish lo matir.
Oh,
so
okay.
It won't be batel.
Exactly. So lechor, the poskim setting in Chavas Das, they distinguish here that what we're talking about over here is like this. We have two scenarios, one on Shabbos and one after Shabbos. The Ramah is talking about after Shabbos. After Shabbos, it's not a davar sheish lo matirin, therefore it's mutar even for him.
It got mixed in.
On Shabbos, if it got mixed on Shabbos, it will be asur for him. Why? Because it's a davar sheish lo matirin for the rest of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I saw that distinction. Not everybody says that. Not everybody.
I would have thought on Shabbos it's forbidden for them because it has davar sheish lo matirin for them.
Right, for them too.
And for him it's permitted because for him it's not a davar sheish lo matirin.
Right.
On Shabbos it will never become
So that's the question. The question is for him. The question is really for him. I mean, for him, since it's always asur, then we don't say this is a davar sheish lo matirin. If it really got mixed up, it should be mutar on Shabbos too.
For him.
For him.
For the others, it should be forbidden on Shabbos because for them it's a davar sheish lo matirin.
Okay, and that's my question. I'm not so sure about that either. I'm not even so sure about that, even though you're right. That's what the poskim seem to be saying, that for them, on Shabbos, it's for sure a davar sheish lo matirin. But the question is, the way, if you read the Ramah, and it says, Lo mikra davar sheish lo matirin, elam kin hutu lemi shene'asar.
For them it's ne'asar because it's Shabbos.
אבל אם נישא לאחד לאוילם אסור, אף אגב שמותר לאחרים, לא מקרה דבר שיש לו מתאים. If something is not called, either it's called or it's not called. If it's not called a דבר שיש לו מתאים, maybe it should be mutar for everyone. How could you say for him yes and for them not?
No.
Oh, why not? Oh, you're right. That's
for a Kohen,
right.
The mixture is permitted.
Anyway, so I'm not going to argue with the poskim that say that for them it continues to be a davar sheish lo matirin if it got mixed up on Shabbos.
But I think a Kohen is a good example. You can have one Jew and another Jew,
yeah.
And you have a mixture in front of you for the bull if he's not Tamid, to eat out of the mixture that the Truma fell in.
But it was never asur to begin with for the Kohen. That's the
but
thing.
It could be Tamid.
Somebody mentions that.
If he's Tamid.
Right, but it was never. It has to have been asur at one point. But anyway, all right, it could be at least, at the very least, if it got mixed up on Shabbos, then it's asur for them because for them it's a davar sheish lo matirin. But for the person, if it will always be asur for him, at least for him, it's not a davar sheish lo matirin. So now the question is that true even on Shabbos? After Shabbos, there seems to be agreement, everybody with this halacha, that if it got mixed up after Shabbos for this individual who it will be asur for, it will be batel. It's not a davar sheish lo matirin. The question is what happens on Shabbos. So there are some that say on Shabbos itself, because it's a davar sheyesh lo matirin for others, it is also asur for him too.
I just.
Yeah, interesting point. Just because for them it is. Yeah. And I wanted to say the opposite.
Or maybe
and I wanted to say the opposite. Why don't you say just because it's not for him, neither is it for everybody else?
Well, but you could make a distinction.
Yes.
And the distinction be that you want to say, since he's actually the Mason,
yeah.
so him you want to penalize even more than the others.
Right.
So in a situation for them it's forbidden, how can you permit it for you? On Shabbos itself.
Right, that's what they're trying to say.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, so it wouldn't be a din
exactly.
of Davar Shesh Lo Matir, but it would be a din of an additional penalty on it.
In some ways, yes. Yeah. You could say that. So that's what someone want to say, that for them it might be Davar Shesh Lo Matir, but and therefore for him too. What? No, but no, there's no issue behind it. You can sell it to a goy. You can't benefit from it directly to eat. You can't eat it. You just can't eat it. You can't benefit from what you've done to on Shabbos itself.
Benefit in terms
of eating, but there's no issue. There's no issue. No.
Can you feed it to dog on Shabbos?
On Shabbos itself? That's a good question. Based on what we've learned, that it's also for others too. It's also for the dog too.
Oh, so you said because of Asher Shlo Matir.
Yeah, because whatever was made b'mezid is also for everybody until after Shabbos, including dogs.
Including dogs.
In other words, you can't benefit from the work that was done on Shabbos. Yeah, that would be the pashut shot.
But he means to say it's a din of hana.
It's not a real din of hana. It's because it's a knas. There's no isur hana. I mean, this is a penalty, right? That you cannot. So it's not isur hana is something completely different min Torah, that you can benefit from avodah zarah and things like that. Yeah. It's a knas, like chometz shavar alav pesach. It's a knas. It's a midrabanan.
But if you can't eat it,
right.
and I'm just with it on Shabbos,
right.
you can't sell it to the dog.
Right.
Then exactly what I'll get out of it.
After Shabbos. After Shabbos you can.
Set it aside for eating after Shabbos.
After Shabbos. That's not the takana or the gzera was only on Shabbos. No benefit from what was done on Shabbos. So anyway, as far as the davar shesh lo matir for that type of a situation, after Shabbos we are in agreement that it's bottled even for him, because there is no davar shesh lo matir here. It's always also for him. It's a regular issur that got mixed. Question is on Shabbos. I thought of the possibility that if it's always going to be also for him, it's never going to have a din of davar shesh lo matir. But as Ilan pointed out, no, you can separate him from them. For him, it will be always also, but for them it will be mutter. For them it will be a davar shesh lo matir. For him, maybe even on Shabbos it will be mutter. Come along the other points and say no, just because it's also for them, because of a knas, we're going to also penalize him, or we're going to at least not be lenient with him, and therefore leave it also for him too. Because the ma'aseh with the davar shesh lo matir, even the whole idea of Shabbos is we want to penalize him.
Yeah.
So even though it got mixed, why should we say it's mutter for him?
Exactly.
In other words, davar shesh lo matir here would not apply, because of course it's never going to be mutter for him, but the knas may still apply even b'taaruvot. That would be a chiddush, that even b'taaruvot it would be. But it's not so simple.
But
it's not so simple, because when you talk about davar shesh lo matir, remember it's not batal afilu be'elef. And if this misken, as we would call him in Hebrew, this poor fellow guy who made a mistake, and and this thing got mixed into the big cholent pot, he's not going to eat cholent, whatever he cooked. He's not going to have anything.
How about the guests?
And how about the guests?
The guests
right?
can't eat the children.
Right, and then so no, right.
For them it's not shesh lo matir, so for they for sure.
And remember, so this could be a big problem, So if we say for them, it's usher. Maybe for him should also be usher. Why should he be any better off? You see what I mean? So it's much more than a davar shesh lo matir, like you said. It could be more of a penalty here that we wouldn't allow it. Anyway, so let everybody know to be careful not to cook on Shabbos. These kinds of things should not happen. But
is there actually issur of being mevatel is chila the Rabbanan in the same way applied also, but
yes.
In other words, if it fell into the pot, you're allowed to add in order to be mevatel it.
No, you would not. That's
true. With the Rabbanan, you are allowed. Not to be mevatel, if it fell by itself into the pot, by the Rabbanan, you are allowed to. So I'm wondering, if it is shesh lo matir, whether you're allowed to add to be mevatel it.
Yeah, remember that we spoke about.
But you say it's not been stopped anyway, so you can't do it.
We spoke about.
And is it then mevatel? There's two different questions.
We spoke about being mevatel.
The Rabbanan?
No.
The Mechaber's passes you're allowed to intention.
Right. That was in a separate issue, but then we had the question as to bitul lechatchila, was it b'chaticha rui l'skaved?
No, if there was habit, of course you're not. Should be allowed.
No, but there was a situation of bitul by even the Rabbanan. that you were not allowed to do
You're
it.
not allowed to throw the Isser Rabbanim into a pot that has 60. But if it fell by itself,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have 60,
No, because
you're allowed to add.
in your case, it was more of the Isser being the Rabbanon.
Yeah, the Isser
Where we're talking about is that the Rabbanon is in the Shir, not in the Isser itself. Okay?
No, but the reason I'm asking is, since it's a davar, it's a davar sheish lo matirim, it's not going to be mispatel. So if I add now to fill it up with 60, it's still not being mispatel. So did I do anything? I wasn't mispatel it.
Yeah. Right. And remember, we're talking about anyway in situations where almost bittul will not help, regardless, because it's not batul afilu be'elef. Remember?
That's davar sheish lo matirim. It's not batel be'elef.
Right.
So since I'm not going to be accomplishing anything by adding, so
Right.
am I allowed to add then?
But what would you gain from it?
Nothing. So you don't have a din of
Oh, I see.
Because it's not going to be misbatel anyway.
You mean in that situation?
Yeah.
If you don't gain anything?
Yeah.
Well, on Shabbos you can't add. So you're talking about in a general situation, why would you want to add to it? Because eventually you'll be able to eat it, so might as well add it to it now.
I don't know.
Yeah. I don't think there would be any
You're not
issue.
being mevatel
Because there's no
anyway.
bittul anyway.
Right, you're not being mevatel.
There won't be any bittul anyway. But generally speaking, these halachas, of course, as we've said before, also apply to Isuri Derabanan. Or the Skabed, right? And Dovashit and Matirin, right? In some situations of Biria, whenever that is possible. You know, it could be these halachas could be, these are always Rabbanon, the shear of it, and therefore they would apply also in situations where the issue is the Rabbanon. And Bittul Isur Lechatchila is always an issue whenever, of course, it will make a difference. But here, it will not make a difference.
Do we actually also say, and I'm not sure this is a halacha on the Shabbos, this doesn't belong.
Yeah.
In case you happen to, you know that we have a Rabbanan Isser on cooking meat in a pot that was on the fire, even if it's...
Right, Klei Rishon.
But no, that's actually the Raisa. On a pot that was heated in the sun, that's the Isser.
Right.
A pot that was heated in the sun, we have an Isser Rabbanan to cook.
Right.
Because you're allowed to cook in the heat of the sun,
Okay.
but you're not allowed to in a coffee.
So that would be a form of Bishul Rabbanan, you're saying. The
That was
Bishul.
Bishul Rabbanan, because
Right.
it's atu.
Yeah.
That,
Right.
Now, but now by something that was something was mispashal the Rabbanan, would Davar Sheish Lo Matirim? Do your house have to wait till after Shabbos is over?
Yeah, because that it applies.
So when Bemezid was
Right.
mivashal in a pot that would heat in the sun,
Yeah, remember it
you also have to wait till after
It
Shabbos.
also applies to Isur Rabbanan. Yeah. So that's the idea of also applies to Isur Rabbanan, or examples of where it's something is Asur Mid Rabbanan to do a form of Bishul, which is a
So a person who cooks
Yeah.
Bemezid in a pot that was heat in the sun can't eat was cooked forever, and his guests can only eat after Shabbos. Is that?
Well, that
was my question.
No,
That
that's a separate question.
that was
What
my
you're saying is if somebody were to do a midrabanan b'meizid, yeah, any midrabanan b'meizid, what are the halachas that apply?
Specifically on this knas, because then he can't eat it la'olam is a
Yeah,
knas.
yeah,
And the guests can't eat it on Shabbos is also a knas.
right. Yeah, but the thing is that once something is done midrabanan, and once something is done midrabanan and it gets mixed up, there are certain additional leniency. Remember, it becomes a suffix derabanan. Once you introduce davar sheish lo matirin, then we say that suffix derabanan does not apply because it's still a davar sheish lo matirin. But generally speaking, as you were saying earlier, very good with bittul isra, for example, something is that it's a derabanan really is not as strict as if it's a deraisa. So would it be asur la'olam? Well, the asur la'olam part is a knas. The chachamim are not mechalek between this or that. On the contrary, there is a chazal that say very clearly that the chachamim made their takanas in some ways even stricter. You know,
Because we're more likely to be
yeah. So therefore, we don't generally find that chiluk. But some things that, of course, are derabanan, depending on the situation, would be more lenient. By davar sheish lo matirim, because of the concept of having to wait anyway till there's shas kosher, till it's mutter, you know, it would not be any different. So if we say just like for those who it's mutter, it's not going to be any different. For the one who is asur, we're also going to say it always will remain asur, believe so, because of the idea behind the gzera or behind the takana of not having him benefit from what he did that was asur. But there are all kinds of situations that we say that b'di'evid something is mutter if it's a rabbanan. B'di'evid. There was the chatchila, of course, something can be asur if it's a rabbanan, but b'di'evid is something else. Depending what was, I'll give you a quick example. What's the halacha if somebody puts something on the fire by mistake?
On Shabbos.
On the blech.
On the blech.
On the blech. In other words, the whole problem is maris ayin. It's already cooked. There's no bishul achar bishul. What if you didn't do it? The goy did it. So there's no real isur deraisa here. You're not going to use it, you're not going to eat it, and the whole thing was really edible and fully, just because an isur was done, that the Rabbana, you see what I mean? That's the example. We're not that machmir. Depending on exactly what was done, we're not always machmir on that. Because there's no real isur that was made to the food. It was just a gzera of maris ayin and so forth. So these kinds of situations, but the eved, they may be okay.
But the goy, let's say if you have a full
No,
day,
for another reason. That whatever you can do, you can't ask a goy to do, right? So the reason I use the goy is because you wouldn't do it. But the goy doesn't know any better, right? That's why I use that example. But still, you can't have him do it for you, but he did it anyway. So we know certain things you can't benefit from the goy having turned on the lights for you, if he did it for you especially, right? So here, he's going to ruin your food just because you warmed it by mistake. So if there was already cooked anyway, there's no problem with bishul. So there's no real isser. It's just that the goy did something that you're not supposed to benefit. But here he's going to ruin my Shabbos. And sometimes we don't say that people can ruin something for you if you didn't give him instructions.
So in other words, if the goy takes the plug that's out of the power main,
right,
of the children pot,
right,
crock pot,
right. That's where the question
sticks
was.
it back into the main on Shabbos.
Right, that would be a similar situation.
You can give it,
it's already fully cooked.
You hand it out.
If it was already
it was fully cooked.
Fully cooked.
Hand it out to the people in the.
It was already fully cooked.
The goy doesn't know.
You didn't give him any instructions. He should not have the ability to ruin it for you. That you benefit from something that he did is something else, but to ruin it? Yeah.
But such a tzaddik to say, no.
No, obviously no. But we say these things can happen.
I had a situation at Shabbos.
Yeah.
A guy did it. I did exactly the same.
Yeah. So it all depends
said,
what was done.
Why did you say it to the court?
Yeah.
He says to the court,
Yeah.
"You're not doing this." For
Anyway,
my benefit."
these kind of situations are derabanan. In these kind of situations, you can be mekel sometimes, but that doesn't mean that every derabanan you're mekel. I mean, right? As we've seen that in these isurim, even the rabbanans apply. In other words, even if the issur is a derabbanah, we still apply it. At least lechatchila. If something happens, it got mixed up, then of course it all depends. If it's a davar sheish material or not, or if
But it doesn't quite fit the case of the crock pot. And
he did a real issur deraisa by putting
the plug.
right.
So he wasn't mekalkel. He found the plug somehow slipped out. So he found it slipped out. He wasn't mekalkel.
Right.
He's now coming to
Well, that situation is different. I would recommend is immediately removing the pot.
taking it out.
Taking it out, we don't want to continue to benefit from it now.
We didn't know that he.
In other words, the pot, right? In other words, the pot was always disconnected, and for sure you don't want to keep it in there and have it boil or warm up. So immediately, if you catch it on time, you would want to remove it.
But now it happened already. He put it in. It's already nice and hot.
Yeah, that's
and now you come into this.
Yeah, that's an issue because he did an issur deraisa for you.
And
but we should have him.
Him what?
He should.
No.
They don't even need.
No. These are loopholes. These are things. If anybody does things against your wishes, in general, okay, that's the klal in many areas. And in this case, because he's doing it to your detriment, he can't spoil your Shabbos.
In other words, for instance,
and you're not really benefiting from it, even though it may be warm right now. So you wait till it cools off. But it shouldn't be that he can ruin it for you because you didn't ask him. But you have to stop him if you see him doing it, of course. Okay.
So you do have to stop him.
Yeah, sure, of course. Remove it. Even though that's a.
So if you see him with the plug in your head, you have to tell him, don't put it in.
Not only that, if you put it in, take it off.
Do you tell him
Oh, sure.
to take the plug back out?
Sure.
He's turning off the electricity.
Makes no difference.
So
But
there is okay.
if the pot is going to remain there, unless you can remove the pot, and what do you want it to let continue to cook?
Tell him take it out.
Take it out. Yeah, I don't want it. I don't want it.
I don't want it.
Yeah, okay.
And
You
he
can
takes
tell,
it out,
yeah,
it's
you don't even have to tell him, Barabbas. You can actually take it. Please don't do this for me. I can't do it. I'm not allowed to. Whatever. Thank you very much, but no, thank you. Yeah, these things can come up, so it's important to keep this in mind. All right.
So, but now, what if you tell him, do you like cold children?
You don't need that.
I would offer you some chulent later, but it's cold.
No, you don't need the remes. The remes, On Shabbat,
No, but if he then goes ahead and does it, you're not allowed to eat it.
remez on Shabbat is only good in some situations. Usually people, whatever you can't do, you can't tell a goy, even if you hint at it. It all depends what it is. Certain things you can, but a lot of things you basically can't. It doesn't minimize the Isser just because you're suggesting or...
So the thing with Shabbos Goy, is very...
Shabbos Goy is generally only for situations where the Chacham said it's mutter to use a Goy. For people who are sick, right? When it's a Derabanan, there's a Tzorech Godol, Tzorech Mitzvah, Tzorech Rabbin. That's when a Shabbos Goy is necessary. And there are situations where you can use this Shabbos Goy. But but not as a blanket heter to use a Goy. The halacha is, whatever I can do on Shabbos, I cannot tell a Goy to do. That's the halacha. Well, there are exceptions.
And if he does it by himself, I can't benefit
from it. But depending on the situation, if there's light anywhere, he just added an additional light. He's not going to ruin it for me, just another light. But if he did, I can't enter the room.
One Shabbos like this. It was getting
right.
Everybody was about to eat, and he came in and he shut the light off.
Yeah.
So, and he made him keep it off.
Yeah.
After he put it on.
Right.
What was that?
Yeah. So anyway, on Shabbos, you have to really learn the halachas very well. There's quite a few of them.
Oh, yeah.
And to review them, and to review again,
yeah.
and again, and again, and again,
yeah.
because we never stop learning. Yeah. Okay.